Hello, everyone. I'm Elena, your host for this lesson. And today's lesson is for a very specific kind of English learner. Not the complete beginner and not the advanced speaker, but the learner who sits somewhere in between. The learner who has studied English for years, who knows the grammar rules, who can read and understand English well, and who can write correctly. But the moment someone asks them a question in English, their mind goes completely blank. Their words disappear, and the frustration of knowing English but not being able to speak it feels overwhelming and discouraging. If that sounds like you, then this lesson was made specifically for you, because today we are going to fix exactly that problem. This is English for people who know grammar but cannot speak. A complete B1 to B2 shadowing and speaking practice masterclass. By the end of this session, you will understand exactly why you freeze when you try to speak. You will have practiced dozens of real conversation sentences and response drills. You will have started breaking the translation habit that is holding you back. And you will have taken your first powerful steps toward genuine speaking confidence. So take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let's begin fixing this together right now. Before we start practicing, I want to take a moment to explain something really important, something that most English teachers never tell their students, and that is this. Knowing grammar and being able to speak are two completely different skills. They live in two completely different parts of your brain. Grammar knowledge is stored in the part of your brain that handles conscious thinking, analysis, and rules. But speaking, real, spontaneous speaking, comes from a completely different place. It comes from a part of your brain that works automatically, instinctively, and without conscious effort. The reason so many learners can read and write English perfectly but cannot speak it is simply this. They have trained the wrong part of their brain. They have spent years filling the grammar and analysis part with rules and structures, but they have never trained the automatic speaking part. And that is exactly what we are going to train today. Through shadowing, repetition, and real conversation practice, we are going to wake up the speaking part of your brain and teach it to work automatically. So listen and shadow this first important thought with me. I know English grammar very well, but knowing grammar is not the same as being able to speak. Speaking is a different skill, and today I am training my speaking skill directly. Shadow it. I know English grammar well, but knowing grammar is not the same as speaking. Speaking is a different skill. Today, I am training my speaking skill directly. Now, let's talk about why you freeze. Understanding why it happens is the first step to making it stop happening. When someone asks you a question in English, your brain does something very specific. It tries to construct the perfect answer. It checks the grammar rules, it searches for the exact right vocabulary, and it translates from your first language. By the time it has done all of that, the moment has passed. The conversation has moved on, and you feel embarrassed and frustrated. Does that sound familiar? I thought so. The solution is not to learn more grammar. The solution is to stop relying on grammar when you speak. Real speakers do not construct sentences consciously. They retrieve them automatically from memory. And the way to build that automatic retrieval is through exactly what we are doing today: repetition, shadowing, and real conversation practice. So shadow this with me. When I try to speak English, I sometimes freeze. I check my grammar. I search for words. I translate in my head. And by the time I am ready, the moment is gone. But today I am learning a new way. Shadow it. When I try to speak, I sometimes freeze. I check grammar. I search for words. I translate, and the moment is gone. But today I am learning a new way. Recognizing this pattern is the first step to breaking it. Now let's practice some workplace English. For many intermediate learners, the most stressful English situations happen at work. Meetings, presentations, and one-on-one conversations with managers or colleagues. The fear of sounding unprofessional or making mistakes in a professional context makes the freezing even worse. So let's build your workplace English confidence right now with some real work scenario drills. Imagine you are in a meeting and someone asks for your input. Shadow this confident response. Thank you for asking. I have been thinking about this, and I believe the most effective approach would be to start with the smaller tasks and build from there. That way, we can identify any issues early and adjust our plan accordingly. Shadow it slowly first. Thank you for asking. I believe the most effective approach would be to start with smaller tasks and build from there. That way, we can identify issues early and adjust accordingly. Now, let's try that exact same sentence one more time, but a little faster, at real conversational speed. Do not worry about being perfect. Just follow my rhythm. Thank you for asking. I believe the most effective approach would be to start with smaller tasks and build from there. That way, we can identify issues early and adjust accordingly. Now, imagine you need to disagree politely in a meeting. Listen and shadow. I appreciate that perspective, and I can see why you would think that. However, I would like to suggest we consider an alternative approach. I think there might be a more efficient way to handle this. Would you be open to hearing it? Shadow it slowly. I appreciate that perspective. However, I would like to suggest an alternative approach. I think there might be a more efficient way. Would you be open to hearing it? And now at natural speed. I appreciate that perspective. However, I would like to suggest an alternative approach. I think there might be a more efficient way. Would you be open to hearing it? Now, imagine you need to ask for clarification during a meeting. Listen and shadow. I am sorry to interrupt, but could you clarify what you mean by that? I want to make sure I fully understand before we move forward. Shadow it. I am sorry to interrupt. Could you clarify what you mean by that? I want to make sure I fully understand before we move forward. These professional phrases are simple, polished, and completely natural. Having them ready in your automatic memory means you will never be silenced by workplace anxiety again. Now, let's begin our first real conversation practice drill. The fastest way to stop freezing is to practice responding quickly. Not perfectly, quickly. I am going to give you a question, and I want you to shadow the answer immediately after me without stopping to think. This is exactly how real conversation works. Ready? The question is, how are you today? Listen to the answer and shadow it immediately. I am doing well, thank you. I feel pretty good today, actually. And you? Shadow it now without thinking. I am doing well, thank you. I feel pretty good today. And you? Now, let's try another one. The question is, what have you been up to lately? Listen and shadow immediately. I have been quite busy with work, but I am managing well. I have also been spending some time improving my English, which feels really good. Shadow it. I have been quite busy with work, but managing well. I have been spending time improving my English. It feels really good. Notice how you did not need to think about grammar to say those sentences. You simply repeated what you heard. That is exactly the mechanism we need to activate for real speaking. Before we move to the next section, I want you to stop for just a second. Drop your shoulders, take a deep breath in, and let it out. If you have some water nearby, take a sip. You are doing incredibly well. Let the tension go, and let's continue. Now let's talk about speaking anxiety. For many intermediate learners, the problem is not just about grammar or vocabulary. It is about anxiety. The moment English is required, the heart rate goes up, the palms get a little sweaty, and the mind goes blank. Even sentences that felt easy during practice suddenly disappear completely. This is called speaking anxiety, and it is incredibly common. In fact, research shows that language anxiety is one of the biggest obstacles to fluency for adult learners worldwide. If you have ever felt this way, please know that you are not alone. And please know that it is not a sign that you cannot speak English. It is simply a sign that your brain has learned to associate English speaking with pressure, judgment, and the fear of failure. That association can be changed with practice, with repetition, with exactly what we are doing right now. So let's shadow this honest and empowering reflection together. I sometimes feel anxious when I try to speak English. My mind goes blank. My heart beats faster. But I now understand that this anxiety is not about my ability. It is just a habit my brain learned, and I am building a new habit right now. Shadow it. I sometimes feel anxious when I try to speak English, but this anxiety is not about my ability. It is just a habit my brain learned, and I am building a new habit right now. Now let's add one more anxiety-breaking reflection. Listen. Every time I practice speaking, even when it feels uncomfortable, I am teaching my brain that English speaking is safe, that it is okay, that nothing bad happens when I speak imperfectly. And with every practice session, the anxiety gets a little smaller and the confidence gets a little bigger. Shadow it. Every time I practice speaking, I teach my brain that English is safe. Nothing bad happens when I speak imperfectly. The anxiety gets smaller, the confidence gets bigger. Let those words become your new truth. Now let's address the translation habit directly. Translating from your first language into English is one of the biggest obstacles to speaking fluency, and it is a habit that almost every intermediate learner has. When someone speaks to you in English, you translate it into your first language to understand it. Then you think of your answer in your first language. Then you try to translate that answer into English. All of that translating takes so much time and mental energy that the conversation feels exhausting and impossible. The solution is to start thinking directly in English, not translating, just thinking. And the way to practice that is through exactly this kind of shadowing work. Because when you shadow a sentence, you are not translating it. You are simply repeating it. Your brain is learning to process English directly without the translation step in between. So shadow this with me. I am training my brain to think directly in English, not to translate, not to check rules, just to think and speak in English naturally and automatically. Shadow it. I am training my brain to think directly in English, not to translate, not to check rules, just to think and speak naturally and automatically. This is the core shift that changes everything for an intermediate learner. Now let's practice some more conversation response drills. The more responses you have stored automatically in your brain, the less you will freeze in real conversations. So listen carefully and shadow each response immediately after me. Imagine someone says to you, "It is a beautiful day today, isn't it?" Shadow this response. "It really is. I love days like this. The weather has been so nice lately." Now imagine someone says, "Did you have a good weekend?" Shadow this. "Yes, actually, it was really nice. I got to relax and spend some time doing things I enjoy. How about you?" Now imagine someone says, "Have you been learning English for a long time?" Shadow this. "Yes, I have been studying for a few years now. I know quite a bit of grammar, but I am really working on my speaking at the moment. It is getting better, though." Now imagine someone says, "What do you do for work?" Shadow this. "I work in an office. My job involves a lot of communication, and that is actually one of the reasons I want to improve my English, to communicate more confidently with people." Each of these responses feels natural and real because they are, and storing them in your brain through repetition means they will be available to you automatically when you need them. Now I want to talk about something called the speaking gap. The speaking gap is the distance between what you know in English and what you can actually say out loud under pressure. Almost every intermediate learner has this gap. You might be able to write a perfectly constructed email in English, but when someone speaks to you face to face, the gap opens up and you fall into it. The reason the gap exists is simple. Writing gives you time to think. Speaking does not. The only way to close the speaking gap is to practice speaking under time pressure, to train your brain to produce English quickly without the luxury of thinking time. That is exactly what our response drills are doing. So let's do some more. Imagine someone says to you, "Are you enjoying the English practice?" Shadow this immediately. "Yes, very much actually. I find that shadowing really helps me get more comfortable with speaking. I feel less nervous about it than I used to." Now imagine someone says, "What is your biggest challenge in English?" Shadow this. "Honestly, my biggest challenge is speaking. I know the grammar and vocabulary, but getting the words out naturally and quickly is something I am still working on. But I am making progress." Now imagine someone says, "Do you practice English every day?" Shadow this. "I try to. I find that even a few minutes of practice each day makes a real difference. Consistency is the most important thing I have learned." Now let's practice breaking the translation habit with a specific technique called direct description. Direct description means you look at something or think about something and immediately describe it in English without going through your first language first. So right now, look around the room you are in and shadow these direct descriptions with me. I am sitting in a room right now. I can see the walls around me. There is furniture nearby. The light in the room is comfortable. I feel settled and focused. I am describing what I see directly in English without translating anything. Shadow it. I am sitting in a room. I can see the walls. There is furniture nearby. The light is comfortable. I feel settled and focused. I am describing directly in English without translating. Now let's try another direct description, this time about how you feel right now. Listen and shadow immediately. Right now, I feel focused and engaged. I am paying attention to every sentence. My mind is active and alert. And I feel a growing sense of confidence with every sentence I shadow. Shadow it. I feel focused and engaged. I am paying attention to every sentence. My mind is active and alert. I feel growing confidence with every sentence I shadow. These direct description exercises train your brain to generate English without the translation step. And with practice, that direct connection between thought and English expression becomes faster and more automatic every time. Now, let's go deeper into understanding why grammar knowledge alone does not create speaking ability. Think about a child learning their first language. Do they study grammar rules? Do they memorize verb conjugation tables? No. They listen. They repeat. They use the language in real situations. And gradually, without ever consciously learning a single grammar rule, they become completely fluent speakers. That is because fluency is built through use, not through analysis. What we are doing today is exactly that. We are using English, repeating it, storing it in the automatic part of our brain, not analyzing it, not checking rules, just using it. So shadow this important realization with me. Fluency is built through use, not through analysis. I do not need to check grammar rules when I speak. I need to use English so often and so consistently that the right sentences come out automatically. Shadow it. Fluency is built through use, not analysis. I do not need to check rules when I speak. I need to use English so often that the right sentences come out automatically. Now, let's add another key insight. Listen. Every time I shadow a sentence, I am storing it in my automatic speaking memory, not my grammar memory, my speaking memory. And the more sentences I store there, the more natural and fluent my speaking becomes. Shadow it. Every time I shadow a sentence, I store it in my speaking memory, not my grammar memory, my speaking memory. The more I store there, the more natural and fluent I become. Now, let's practice a full conversation scenario. Real fluency means being able to handle a complete conversation, not just individual sentences. Imagine you are meeting someone new at a social event or at work. Listen to this conversation and shadow your side of it after me. Someone introduces themselves and says, "Hi, my name is James. Nice to meet you." Shadow your response. "Hi, James. Nice to meet you too. I am Elena. I do not think we have met before. Are you new here?" James says, "Yes, I just started last week. I am still finding my way around." Shadow your response. "Oh, welcome then. I hope you are settling in well. If you need any help finding your way around, just let me know." James says, "Thank you. That is very kind. So, how long have you been here?" Shadow your response. "I have been here for about 2 years now. It goes by quickly, but I really enjoy it here. The people are friendly, and the work is interesting." James says, "That is good to hear. I am glad I chose this place." Shadow your response. "I think you will be happy here. It takes a little time to get used to, but once you do, it really feels like a good fit. Let's continue." James says, "What kind of work do you do exactly?" Shadow your response. I mainly work on communication and content, a lot of writing and some presentations. It keeps me busy, but I enjoy the variety. How about you? Practice this full scenario several times. Each time you do, it will feel a little more natural and a little less effortful. Now, let's talk about the fear of making mistakes. For many intermediate learners, the fear of making a grammar mistake is one of the main reasons they freeze when speaking. They know what they want to say, but they are afraid that if they say it imperfectly, people will judge them or misunderstand them. So they stay silent, or they speak so slowly and carefully that the conversation loses its natural rhythm. Here is the truth about mistakes that every intermediate learner needs to hear. Native speakers make mistakes all the time, every single day. They use the wrong word. They start a sentence and change direction halfway through. They say things imperfectly, and nobody minds. Because in real conversation, communication is the goal, not perfection. The person you are speaking to is not grading your grammar. They are simply trying to understand you. As long as your message is clear, your grammar mistakes do not matter anywhere near as much as you think they do. So shadow this liberating thought with me. Making mistakes when I speak does not mean I have failed. It means I am communicating, and communication is always more important than perfection. I am allowed to make mistakes. I am allowed to be imperfect because I am speaking, and speaking is what matters. Shadow it. Making mistakes does not mean I have failed. It means I am communicating. Communication is more important than perfection. I am allowed to make mistakes. I am allowed to be imperfect because I am speaking, and speaking is what matters. Now, let's practice some more response drills focused specifically on moments when learners commonly freeze. These are the situations that feel most difficult. Practicing responses to them now will make them feel much more manageable in real life. Imagine someone says something you did not fully understand. Shadow this response immediately. Sorry, could you say that again? Please, I want to make sure I understood correctly. Now, imagine you need a moment to think of the right word. Shadow this. Let me think of the right way to say this. Give me just a second. I want to express this clearly. Now, imagine you made a mistake and want to correct yourself. Shadow this. Actually, let me rephrase that. What I meant to say was, and then you continue with the corrected sentence. Now imagine someone speaks too fast and you cannot follow. Shadow this. I am sorry, could you speak a little more slowly? Please. My English is good, but I follow better when people speak at a slightly slower pace. Thank you. Now imagine you want to keep a conversation going, but you are not sure what to say next. Shadow this. That is really interesting. Tell me more about that. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Each of these responses is a tool, a real practical tool that you can pull out and use whenever you need it. Having these tools ready in your automatic memory means you will never be completely stuck in a real conversation again. Now, let's practice building longer responses. One of the biggest signs of speaking confidence is the ability to extend your answers beyond a single short sentence. Many intermediate learners answer questions with yes or no or very short responses because they are afraid to say more. But in real conversation, extended responses are what build connection and show genuine fluency. Let's practice extending our answers right now. Imagine someone asks, "Do you enjoy learning English?" A short, nervous answer might be, "Yes, I do." But listen to this extended, confident answer and shadow it. "Yes, I really do, actually. There are days when it feels challenging, of course, but overall, I find it very rewarding. I love the feeling of understanding something new or expressing an idea that I could not express before. It gives me a real sense of progress and achievement." Shadow it slowly. "Yes, I really do. There are days when it feels challenging, but overall, it is very rewarding. I love understanding something new or expressing an idea I could not express before. It gives me a real sense of progress." Now, let's try it a little faster, flowing smoothly. "Yes, I really do. There are days when it feels challenging, but overall, it is very rewarding. I love understanding something new or expressing an idea I could not express before. It gives me a real sense of progress." Now, let's try another extended response. Imagine someone asks, "What do you do in your free time?" A short answer might be, "I watch films." But listen to this extended version and shadow it. "In my free time, I enjoy a mix of things. I watch films and series, mostly in English actually, because it helps me practice. I also like to read when I have the time, and I try to get outside and walk when the weather is good. I find that having a balance of different activities keeps me feeling energized and motivated." Shadow it slowly first. "In my free time, I enjoy a mix of things. I watch films and series, mostly in English, to practice. I like to read when I have time. I try to get outside and walk. A balance of activities keeps me energized and motivated." Now at natural native speed. "In my free time, I enjoy a mix of things. I watch films and series, mostly in English, to practice. I like to read when I have time. I try to get outside and walk. A balance of activities keeps me energized and motivated." Extended answers like these are what transform a basic conversation into a genuine and memorable connection. Now let's address something that many intermediate learners experience but rarely talk about: the feeling of having two voices in your head when you try to speak English. The first voice is the one that wants to communicate. It has something genuine to say. It wants to connect and express. The second voice is the critical grammar checker. It interrupts the first voice constantly, saying, "Wait, is that the right tense? Should I use this preposition or that one? Is my pronunciation correct?" And that second voice, as well-intentioned as it is the voice that is ruining your fluency. Fluency requires you to turn down the volume on the critical voice and turn up the volume on the communicating voice. That is exactly what consistent shadowing practice does. It builds your communicating voice so strong that the critical voice gradually loses its power over you. So shadow this with me. I have two voices in my head when I speak English: the voice that wants to communicate and the voice that checks and criticizes. Today, I am turning up the volume on my communicating voice, and I am turning down the critical voice, because communication is the goal. Shadow it. I have two voices, the communicating voice and the critical voice. Today, I am turning up the communicating voice, turning down the critical voice. Communication is the goal. Now let's add to that. Listen. The more I practice shadowing and speaking, the stronger my communicating voice becomes, and the weaker my critical voice becomes, until one day, The critical voice barely speaks at all, and I communicate freely and naturally in English. Shadow it. The more I practice, the stronger my communicating voice becomes. The weaker the critical voice becomes, until I communicate freely and naturally in English. You have been practicing for a while now. Let's take one more physical reset before we tackle something challenging. Roll your shoulders back, unclench your jaw, take a slow breath, and remember that you are safe here. Now let's practice one more scenario. This time, the scenario is a phone call. Phone calls are one of the situations that intermediate learners find most challenging. You cannot see the person's face. You cannot use body language, and everything depends on your spoken English. Let's practice. Imagine you are calling to make an appointment. Listen and shadow your side of the conversation. You call and someone answers. You say, "Hello, my name is Elena, and I am calling to make an appointment. I was wondering if you have any availability this week or next week." They say they have availability on Thursday afternoon. You respond, "Thursday afternoon would work perfectly for me. What time would be best?" They say 3 o'clock. You say, 3 o'clock on Thursday. Perfect. Could I have the address? Please. I want to make sure I have everything noted down correctly. They give you the address. You say, "Thank you very much. And is there anything I need to bring with me or prepare in advance?" They say, "Just bring your identification." You say, "Of course. I will make sure to bring that. Thank you so much for your help. I will see you on Thursday at 3. Have a lovely day. Goodbye." Now shadow this entire phone call scenario again from the beginning. Notice how every sentence is simple, clear, and direct. You do not need complex grammar to make a successful phone call. You just need confidence and the right phrases stored in your automatic memory. Now let's practice thinking in English through a technique called English narration. English narration means you describe what you are doing or experiencing in real time in English, without stopping to translate. It is one of the most powerful techniques for breaking the translation habit because it connects English directly to your moment-by-moment experience. So shadow these narration sentences with me right now. Right now, I am sitting and listening to this lesson. I am practicing my English. I am repeating sentences after Elena, and I am getting better with every repetition. Shadow it. Right now, I am sitting and listening to this lesson. I am practicing my English. I am repeating sentences. I am getting better with every repetition. Now let's continue the narration. Listen. I can feel my brain working right now, processing the English, storing the sentences, building connections between words and meaning. This is exactly what fluency training feels like from the inside. Shadow it. I can feel my brain working, processing English, storing sentences, building connections between words and meaning. This is what fluency training feels like from the inside. Now let's add one more narration practice. Listen. I am not translating right now. I am not checking grammar rules. I am simply listening, understanding, and repeating. And that simple process is building my speaking ability more effectively than years of grammar study ever did. Shadow it. I am not translating. I am not checking grammar. I am listening, understanding, and repeating. And that process is building my speaking ability more effectively than years of grammar study. Now let's practice one of the most powerful and often overlooked speaking skills, storytelling. The ability to tell a short story or anecdote in English is what transforms you from a basic communicator into a genuinely engaging and memorable speaker. Most intermediate learners can answer questions, but when it comes to volunteering a story, sharing an experience, or entertaining someone with something that happened to them, they go quiet. Because storytelling feels much more complex and exposed than simply answering a question. But it does not have to be. A good story in English does not need to be long or complex. It just needs to have three simple things: a beginning that sets the scene, a middle that describes what happened, and an end that shares the outcome or the feeling. Let's practice telling a simple story right now. Listen to this and shadow it with me. Something funny happened to me last week. I was in a coffee shop, and I ordered my usual drink. But when the barista called my name, I did not hear them properly. So I just sat there waiting. And then I realized everyone was looking at me, and my drink had been sitting on the counter for 5 minutes. I was so embarrassed, but we all laughed about it. Shadow it in parts. Something funny happened last week. I was in a coffee shop and ordered my usual drink. When the barista called my name, I did not hear properly. I sat there waiting. Then I realized everyone was looking at me. My drink had been on the counter for 5 minutes. I was embarrassed, but we all laughed. Now let's try another short story. This one is about a small personal achievement. Listen. I want to tell you about a moment that made me feel really proud of my English. I was speaking with someone I had just met, and they said something that I would not have understood a few months ago. But this time, I understood it perfectly, and I responded naturally, and the conversation just flowed. It was one of those moments when I realized that my English is actually improving, even when I do not notice it day to day. Shadow it. I want to tell you about a moment I felt proud. I was speaking with someone I had just met. They said something I would not have understood a few months ago, but this time I understood perfectly. I responded naturally. The conversation flowed. It was a moment when I realized my English is actually improving, even when I do not notice it. These short personal stories are some of the most powerful things you can say in English because they are real, they are warm, and they create genuine human connection. Now let's talk about what happens in your brain when you practice shadowing consistently. Understanding this will help you trust the process, even on days when progress feels slow. When you first shadow a new sentence, your brain processes it consciously. It feels a little effortful, a little slow. But every time you repeat that sentence, the neural pathway in your brain gets a little stronger, a little faster, a little more automatic, until eventually, after enough repetitions, that sentence becomes completely automatic. You do not have to think about it at all. It just comes out. And this process, this gradual movement from conscious effort to automatic production, is exactly what fluency is. It is not magic. It is not talent. It is repetition. Consistent, patient, purposeful repetition. So shadow this understanding with me. Every time I repeat a sentence, the neural pathway gets stronger, faster, more automatic. And that is how fluency is built. Not through talent, not through magic, through repetition. Consistent, patient, purposeful repetition. Shadow it. Every time I repeat a sentence, the neural pathway gets stronger, faster, more automatic. Fluency is built through repetition. Consistent, patient, purposeful repetition. Now let's add one more brain science insight. Listen. Right now, as I shadow these sentences, my brain is literally changing. New connections are forming. Old habits are weakening, and a new automatic speaking ability is developing inside me. That is what is happening right now. Shadow it. Right now, my brain is literally changing. New connections are forming. Old habits are weakening. A new automatic speaking ability is developing inside me. Right now. Now let's practice a different kind of conversation drill. This time, we are going to practice expressing opinions. Expressing opinions is something many intermediate learners avoid in English. They feel safe stating facts, but when it comes to sharing what they actually think or feel, they freeze. Let's break through that barrier right now. Imagine someone asks your opinion on something simple. They ask, "Do you prefer the city or the countryside?" Listen to this confident opinion response and shadow it. Honestly, I prefer the city. I like the energy and the convenience. There is always something happening, and everything you need is close by. Although, I do appreciate the countryside for a weekend escape. Shadow it. Honestly, I prefer the city. I like the energy and the convenience. There is always something happening, and everything you need is close by. Although, I appreciate the countryside for a weekend escape. Now, imagine someone asks, "Do you think it is better to learn a language in a classroom or through experience?" Listen and shadow. In my opinion, both have their place. Classrooms give you structure and foundation, but real experience is what actually makes you fluent. You can study grammar for years, but until you use the language in real situations, it never really becomes natural. Shadow it. In my opinion, both have their place. Classrooms give structure and foundation, but real experience makes you fluent. You can study grammar for years, but until you use the language in real situations, it never becomes natural. Notice how these opinions are expressed simply and clearly. You do not need advanced grammar to share your perspective. You just need the confidence to say what you think. Now let's practice another area where intermediate learners commonly struggle: disagreeing politely and sharing a different opinion without feeling rude or aggressive. Many learners either avoid sharing their real opinion to keep the peace, or they state their disagreement too bluntly, without the softening language that makes it feel respectful. Both of these are problems. Avoiding your opinion makes conversations feel shallow, and being too blunt can damage relationships. So let's practice the middle ground, the art of polite and confident disagreement in English. Shadow these disagreement phrases with me. Listen. I see where you are coming from, but I actually think there is another way to look at it. Shadow it. I see where you are coming from, but I think there is another way to look at it. Now, listen, that is an interesting point. I am not sure I fully agree, though, in my experience, it tends to work a little differently. Shadow it. That is an interesting point. I am not sure I fully agree. In my experience, it tends to work a little differently. Now, listen. I respect your view on this. I just have a slightly different perspective. Can I share it? Shadow it. I respect your view. I just have a slightly different perspective. Can I share it? And one more. Listen. I think we might see this differently, and that is okay. But let me explain why I feel the way I do about it. Shadow it. I think we see this differently, and that is okay. But let me explain why I feel the way I do. These phrases are respectful, confident, and completely natural. They allow you to hold your ground while keeping the conversation warm and open. Practicing them now means you will never have to choose between honesty and politeness in English again. You can have both. Now let's practice responding to compliments and encouragement in English. Many intermediate learners feel uncomfortable receiving compliments in English. They do not know what to say, and they often respond in a way that closes the conversation rather than opening it. Let's practice some natural, comfortable responses to compliments. Imagine someone says, "Your English is really good." Shadow this natural response. "Thank you. That means a lot. I have been working really hard on it. I still have a lot to improve, but I can feel myself getting better." Now imagine someone says, "You explain that really clearly." Shadow this. "Oh, thank you. I sometimes worry that I am not expressing myself clearly enough in English, so it is reassuring to hear that." Now imagine someone says, "I really enjoy talking with you." Shadow this. "That is so kind of you to say. I enjoy our conversations too. You are very easy to talk to, and that makes me feel more comfortable speaking in English." Now imagine someone says, "You should be proud of your English." Shadow this. "Thank you. I am proud of the progress I have made. Actually, it has taken a lot of consistent practice, but I can feel the difference, and that motivates me to keep going." These natural, gracious responses make conversations warmer and more genuine. Practicing them now means they will be ready for you when you need them in real life. Now let's go back to the translation habit and practice one more powerful technique for breaking it. This technique is called the direct response method. Here is how it works. When someone says something to you in English, instead of translating it into your first language, you simply respond to the feeling or meaning of what they said directly in English, without the translation step. If someone says something funny, you respond with a laugh and a natural expression like, "That is hilarious. I love that." Or, "That is so true." If someone shares something difficult, you respond with, "I am sorry to hear that. That must be really hard." If someone shares good news, you respond with, "That is wonderful. I am so happy for you." These direct emotional responses do not require any grammar analysis. They come from your emotional brain, not your analytical brain. Practicing them trains you to engage in conversation directly and naturally. So shadow these direct response phrases with me. "That is hilarious. I love that. That is so true. I am sorry to hear that. That must be really hard. That is wonderful. I am so happy for you. That makes total sense. I completely understand. Oh, really? Tell me more. I had no idea. That is fascinating. That is such a good point. I never thought about it that way." Practice these responses until they feel completely automatic, because they are the building blocks of natural conversational fluency. Now let's do a longer, extended shadowing practice that addresses the speaking gap directly. Listen to this fully first, and then shadow it with me, section by section. I used to think that my problem with speaking English was about grammar. I thought that if I just learned more rules, more verb forms, more complex structures, then I would be able to speak. But I was wrong. The problem was never grammar. The problem was that I had never practiced actually speaking. I had trained myself to analyze English, to understand it from the outside. But I had never trained myself to produce it from the inside, to let it flow out of me naturally and automatically. And that is the difference. The difference between knowing English and speaking English, between understanding a language and living in it. And today, with every sentence I shadow, I am moving from knowing to speaking, from understanding to living. Now shadow it in sections. I used to think my problem was grammar. I thought more rules would help me speak. But I was wrong. The problem was never grammar. The problem was that I had never practiced actually speaking. I had trained myself to analyze English, but never to produce it naturally and automatically. Today, with every sentence I shadow, I am moving from knowing to speaking, from understanding to living. Let that shift happen inside you right now. Now let's practice some very specific situations that intermediate learners commonly find difficult. The first is starting a conversation. Many learners know how to respond when spoken to, but starting a conversation themselves feels almost impossible. Let's practice some natural conversation starters right now. Shadow these with me. Excuse me, I hope you do not mind me saying, but I noticed you are reading a book. I have been meaning to read. How are you finding it? Shadow it. Excuse me, I hope you do not mind. I noticed you are reading a book. I have been meaning to read. How are you finding it? Now another conversation starter. Listen. I do not think we have met before. I am Elena. I have seen you around, but we have never been properly introduced. Shadow it. I do not think we have met before. I am Elena. I have seen you around, but we have never been properly introduced. Now one more. Listen. This might sound a bit random, but I love your bag. Where did you get it? I have been looking for something exactly like that. Shadow it. This might sound random, but I love your bag. Where did you get it? I have been looking for something exactly like that. These conversation starters feel natural and friendly because they come from genuine observation and interest. Practicing them now means starting conversations in English will feel much less daunting in real life. Now let's practice the second difficult situation, keeping a conversation going. Many intermediate learners can get a conversation started, but after the opening exchange, they do not know how to keep it moving forward, and the conversation dies out. Let's practice some conversation continuing techniques. The most powerful one is simply asking a follow-up question. Shadow these follow-up questions with me. And how long have you been doing that? Shadow it. That is interesting. What made you decide to do it that way? Shadow it. Really? And how did that work out for you? Shadow it. I have always been curious about that. What is it actually like? Shadow it. Have you always felt that way? Or is it something that developed over time? Shadow it. And what do you think is the most important thing you have learned from that experience? Shadow it. These follow-up questions do two things at once. They keep the conversation going, and they show genuine interest in the other person, which is one of the most attractive qualities in any conversation partner, in any language. Now let's combine a statement with a follow-up question. Listen, that sounds like a really interesting experience. I have never done anything quite like that. What would you recommend to someone who wanted to try it for the first time? Shadow it. That sounds like a really interesting experience. I have never done anything quite like that. What would you recommend to someone who wanted to try it for the first time? Perfect conversational English. Now let's practice the third difficult situation, ending a conversation gracefully. Many intermediate learners do not know how to end a conversation in English without feeling rude or awkward. So let's practice some natural, graceful conversation endings. Shadow these with me. It has been really lovely talking with you. I hope we get the chance to catch up again soon. Shadow it. I have really enjoyed this conversation. I feel like we could talk for hours, but I should probably get going. Shadow it. I am going to have to excuse myself in a moment, but I am really glad we had the chance to chat. Shadow it. I do not want to keep you, but before I go, I just wanted to say how much I have enjoyed talking with you today. Shadow it. It was wonderful to meet you. I hope our paths cross again. Take care of yourself. Shadow it. These are warm, genuine, and completely natural ways to end a conversation in English. Having them ready in your automatic memory means you will never feel trapped or awkward at the end of an interaction again. Now let's practice one more scenario that intermediate learners find especially difficult. Job interviews, or any formal situation where you need to talk about yourself professionally and confidently in English. Talking about your own skills, experience, and qualities in another language requires a level of vocabulary and confidence that takes specific practice. Let's drill some job interview style responses right now. Imagine the interviewer says, "Tell me about yourself." Listen to this confident response and shadow it. Of course, I have been working in my field for several years now, and I have developed strong skills in communication, organization, and problem solving. I am someone who enjoys taking on new challenges, and I am always looking for ways to improve. One of my main goals right now is to develop my English further, because I believe